A concern raised by Al Pettit during a recent Structure Advisory Committee meeting and raised in a draft report is that the Beaver Hill Disposal Site is processing less than half the amount of waste it was a few years ago, and that this is a statewide trend. The source of this last statement has not been made available to the public, so it is impossible to analyze those conclusions, but one of the reasons that Beaver Hill has seen a reduction is because a local hauler, Waste Connections, started taking its trash to a landfill out of the county when their offer to purchase the site was turned down in 2010.
Well, interesting business that we're in there.
Yes.
I think probably the most obvious issue about solid waste is that we've got a very expensive disposal process out there as opposed to landfill. The amount of garbage being dumped out there has been declining, obviously, in line with the economy. We don't have as much building going on and demolishing, et cetera. So I found a graph online that indicated that statewide solid waste dumping levels are down to 93, 94 levels. So it's really plummeted on a statewide basis. What folks out there try to do is offset that diminishing tonnage by raising rates, and that has served in some ways to exacerbate a problem of declining revenues. As the rates went up, more and more people were inclined to take it elsewhere, whether it's by the side of the road somewhere in the county or at a larger level, taking it up to Corvallis. And just briefly doing the numbers in the meeting, I mean, we kind of estimated that 25 tons of load, Waste Connections probably saving somewhere at $1,000 or more per load going up to Corvallis as opposed to taking out there, and that's really what's been happening. More and more of our stuff has been going up to Corvallis.
Waste Connections chose and was given the opportunity to do business in Coos County and may haul our trash anywhere, but the county actually has a right and a responsibility to assess a system benefit fee for every ton of waste transferred out of local control. Lane County assesses just such a fee.
Well, I hope I don't get too lengthy here, but essentially the Lane County actually requires all waste generated in their county to go through their transfer sites, and they have a number of different sites, but they have one main transfer site in Eugene, and one or two haulers a number of years ago told them that they felt that they could haul cheaper to another landfill, whether it be years or some other facility outside of Lane County, that they could do their business cheaper, and that's what they intended to do. Lane County said that wasn't the deal, it wasn't the contract, and so they said, if that's what you want to do, we're going to institute a system benefit fee. And they actually did that, and it was just a matter of drafting it and passing it by a majority of their commissioners. They did that, and essentially what that system benefit fee said, and that's also on my website. There's a copy of what a system benefit fee involves. Is that you can take your waste anywhere you want, but since this was an integral part of the county's revenue and required to help cover the costs of collection, potential liability, closure of whatever site they may have, that they were going to charge whatever the difference was from what you were potentially saving for trucks. And the Supreme Court even ruled in favor of a couple of counties back east that has a case extremely similar to what we're dealing with here and what Lane County dealt with there. And these are almost identical scenarios. And so one of the potentials would be to pass a system benefit fee and simply historically coming to us, and we do have all the historical data. That too is available on my website. We can use historical data, and at the last Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting, the chair of that committee even questioned the Waste Connections
representative.
What his actual title is, District Manager Pete Smart, about why their numbers had dropped off when all of our other commercial haulers, local from Myrtle Point, Hill, and the sort, why those numbers had stayed the same and theirs had dropped off significantly. And Pete Smart was told us, he said he felt that he could do business elsewhere cheaper. Well, that's exactly why Wayne County initiated that system. And that's another area that I take issue with this structure committee. Al Pettit said that he had found some study on the internet that showed that waste volumes had dropped off nationwide, and that ours was only following suit. In fact, we know that's not true because, by his own admission, he has deliberately scaled back. And we do have a contract that in 2010, Bill Richardson, the manager of the Waste Connections facility in Coos Bay, said involved the stated that primarily all of the waste that is collected in the outlying areas, in the unincorporated areas of Coos County, were supposed to go to our facility at Beaver Hill. And again, we look at the historical data, that has been roughly 22 to 3,000 tons a year. And now suddenly, after the proposed takeover of the site by Waste Connections, those numbers are dropping off significantly.
Finally, a November 1, 2011 report prepared by Pickett's Engineering estimates the costs of closing the Beaver Hill Disposal Site at $2.3 million, which would probably trigger the closure of the Jonay construction landfill site at a cost of $7.9 million.
I don't have those documents immediately in front of me, but in the budget that's adopted each year, the breakdown shows that they estimate the costs of final closure, and that includes all of the closure costs to include the 30 years of monitoring that will take place, to be in the neighborhood of $9 to $11 million. Mm-hmm. We currently have less than $3 million in that closure contingency fund.
Right.
That was what was being set aside to help cover those costs. Initial closure for Jonay is extremely costly, and then the monitoring, of course, is an ongoing cost for 30 years. The cost to close the Beaver Hill site, again, is the initial cost is $1.5 to $2 million, and by turning the site into a transfer site, even if we had 2 or 3 years of metal reclamation left in that trench, not incinerating anymore we would no longer have a need to filter recyclables from the trench.
Okay.
But ultimately, it would trigger the closure, and those monies would then have to be spent on the closure. The requirement by the DEQ, to the best of my knowledge, is that this fund isn't even necessary. That what has to be guaranteed by the county is that the cost will be covered, and that's the call from you and I. That means that if there isn't a sufficient amount of money available at the time that the closure, the plant closure begins, that debt or that cost would be incurred on the citizens, and that'll either come as, and this was even expressed at some of the meetings in 2010, that those expenses would then fall on the citizens, and it would either come from a further cutting of services you and I pay for and deserve now,
Right.
in order to tap into the difference, or it would come at a cost of the passage of the to cover closure.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that we have to go through any of that.
Okay.
I'll close by saying that on my site you'll also find a proposal
That's it.
that,
Yeah.
that would ultimately result in free delivery of garbage to our disposal site by the citizens, by the Coos County residents.
Right.
And it would be an option that would be open to them, and it requires the passage of a tax. And again, I don't have that up in front of me, but I believe it was about 75 cents on the 1,000, maybe 50 cents on the
Right.
that would, based on the assessed values of county properties, would replace all the income that we operate on.
Sure.
And that proposal would take away the need for people to have to use curbside pickup. But we could also, at that time, reduce the cost of doing business with those commercial haulers, and probably bring our costs well below the costs that they currently incur going outside, that Waste Connections currently incurs going to Coffin Butte or some other open landfill.
Right.
So there are many things that are potentially available to us to greatly reduce the costs, to offset costs, to encourage this facility's continued operation.